everyone, and thank you for joining us for this panel discussion. Everyone who has joined us on Zoom right now, everyone who will join us on Facebook, we're so happy to be here for this panel discussion. And uh, to introduce myself, I'm Aishwarya Zawargekar. I'm an editor at Bound, and we curate immersive writing retreats, workshops, and online courses for writers and other creative professionals. And we love to celebrate storytelling, and we love to have discussions with writers on their writing processes, on their books. And that's what we're here to do today. And we're here to celebrate rural stories, and I'm really happy with doing this on minorities rights day, which is such an important day, and is something that I think needs to be celebrated so much more and needs to be given so much more weight in India with everything that's going on. And I'm so happy to welcome our four authors for this panel discussion. So welcome Aparna and Subuhi, Preeti, and Vishaka.
Thank you.
Hi. So before we get into the event, I think I'm going to invite Daya Subramanian. So she is from Karadi Tales, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about Karadi Tales and about the Pari series, which has sort of produced these wonderful books. So Daya, you can take it forward.
Thank you, Aishwarya. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to be here. So, like Aishwarya said, I work at Karadi Tales, and of course, we're the publishing house that has brought out this series of books in collaboration with the People's Archive of Rural India. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Karadi Tales first. So, we're an independent children's publishing house founded in 1996. So, we turn 25 next year. And when we first started, we were primarily publishing audiobooks for children. So these were stories narrated by some of India's biggest personalities like Nasiruddin Shah and Syed Jafri. And they were set to professionally performed musical scores inspired by Indian classical ragas. And after a while, we moved on to also publishing picture books for children. So children up to around the age of 8 or 9. But around 2018, we started thinking that, we want to expand our reach and also bring out books for slightly older children between the ages of 10 and 15. And of course, kids between the age of 10 and 15 are not going to be reading picture books. It would have to be chapter books. And this is something very new for us and something we've never done before. So the first thing we did is we created an imprint, Minmini Reads, which is the imprint under which the Pari series has been published. And we began to think of ideas for our first set of chapter books. Now, it just so happens that our publishing director, Ms. Shobha Vishwanath, she had been friends with Mr. P. Sainath, the veteran journalist and founder editor of People's Archive of Rural India. So the People's Archive of Rural India is this incredible resource full of real life stories of people from rural India covered by some of the best journalists. And both we and Mr. Sainath felt that some of these articles would make for really great stories for children. And also we felt that for this particular age group, it's so important to have diversity in the kinds of books that we bring out. And it's important to have stories set in rural India about rural children, both for urban children to read about rural children and for rural children to read about other rural children. And in Indian children's literature, there's a dearth of stories about disenfranchised people and communities. So we wanted these books to tell these stories in a very relatable way, not make them too serious or too dark or too sad. We wanted them to be stories of hope and stories of triumph. So we sat down and we made a list of articles that we found interesting from the Pari website and that we thought would work well as stories. And Mr. Sainath also offered his inputs. And very soon we had our shortlist and it was time to look for the people who could write these stories. Now, in some cases, the Pari books, they've been written by the journalist who wrote the original article. For example, Aparna Karthikeyan, who wrote the article A Thorny Life but Chandra Bets on Flowers, she adapted that to the book No Nonsense Nandini. And Vishaka George, who wrote Krishnagiri's House of Uncommons, the article, wrote the book House of Uncommons. And Preeti David, who wrote the article Taking Their Skills Back to School in Sitilingi, also wrote Coming Home. Now, No Ticket Will Travel was an article about migrant laborers, and the article was written by Rahul M. for Pari, and Subuhi Jivani, who also works for Pari and who has experience writing books for children, converted this article into a series of short stories. And the book is also called No Ticket Will Travel. And the book A Big Splash is based on an article called From Cotton Fields to the Paralympics, written by Revati R. for Pari. And that was adapted by Niveda Ganesh, who was actually an intern with us at Karadi Tales. So we had our articles, we had our authors, and after several months of draft chapters and edits and fact checks and some back and forths, we had our books. And 4 of the authors are here today. I'm sure they'll be able to tell you much more about them. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Daya, so much for that introduction and for telling us, all of this information about how the series came into being. Because I think the thought that goes behind creating a series like this matters so much. And I think the amount of thought and the amount of effort you have put into making sure that it is something that's, extremely meaningful, something that really captures a lot of sort of different experiences is, I think, really remarkable. So thank you for that introduction.
Thank you, Aishwarya.
Yeah. And so can I request sort of the 4 of you to tell us a little bit about yourselves? I think it's best when people introduce themselves because they can tell the most interesting parts. So if you could introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about, the book that you've written, I think that would be amazing. So Aparna, do you want to start?
Thank you. Thank you, Aishwarya. Thank you for having us. And thanks, Daya, for that lovely introduction to the series. So let me tell you what I'm not before I tell you what I am. I'm not a journalist. I'm not a trained writer. So I just happened to get into all this because I was a mom, I was a wife, and I was living away from home, and I had a laptop, and I had the world at the other end, and all I could do was write. So I started writing, and that's how my journey as a writer began. With a small girl who used to go to school, and then my whole day was bookended by her routine. And I think in 2011 we came back to India, and I started writing for the Metro Plus. In 2013, I sent a fan mail to journalist P. Sainath, and that changed my life. He gave me direction and purpose. I found a way to channelize my passion and bring in together like my love for Tamil Nadu, for travel, for writing, all of that. It kind of came together, and I think I was blown away when he spoke to me about the People's Archive of Rural India. So I started writing for it, and it was on my 40th birthday that I met the person who I wrote the book about. I was wandering in this village in Sivagangai. I was looking for well diggers actually. And Chandra's mother found me there, and she said, in a little village, you're a stranger, and then people come up to you and say, who are you? What are you doing here? And then I said, I'm Aparna, and I'm Arjun's sister, because my brother is the one who, knew the person who was living there. And then she said, oh, he's the umpire. And all along, my brother had told us that he was a cricketer. I didn't know that he was sitting under the tree, and then, and he was umpiring the game. And, that day I found that out. And then she said, come home. And I said, okay. It was 7 o'clock in the morning. And she took me to her house, and, it was a little hut covered by tarpaulin. And she introduced me to her daughter. After that, it was kind of a very, I think it was a difficult moment, because I realized both the women had lost their husbands within days of each other, and they were farming for a living. There were small children, and they were very spirited. There was no, pity. There was nothing like that. They very matter-of-factly told me what was happening and what they were doing. I remember coming back to Bombay, and then I lived in Bombay at that point, and then speaking to Sainath, and he said, do you think this will make for a story? And he said, yes. And in the Pari way of doing things, you go back to the story and you go back to the story until the story builds itself. You never meet somebody one time and then write about it. So I went back to Chandra several times over the years, and then, wrote about different facets of what she was doing, and also learned a lot about the agrarian crisis through her. This book is born out of those many visits to Sivaganga district, to Melakade, to her house, spending mornings there, spending midnights there, spending evenings chatting with her, and then calling her up on the phone. And then, she'd have like this ragging session. She's like absolutely wonderful, spirited young woman. And it seemed like a privilege to be able to tell her story. And she was okay with it, which is the most important thing. So that's a little bit about me. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. I agree with, the idea of also research being something where you go back to the topic. I mean, I know that people aren't topics, but, you sort of go back to the root of it and you sort of interact with them and you find out more and more and more before you feel like you can really write anything on that subject. So that is something that I can relate to. Okay, who wants to go next?
Preeti, why don't you go for it?
Okay. Hi, Aishwarya. Thank you for having all of us, and thank you, Daya, for that introduction. So I'll just give you a little brief background about myself. As Aparna said, what she is not, well, I also have something, a bit of that, because it's a little hard to box me in. I was a business journalist for the longest time ever. I've done lots of corporate stories and what are called the soft corporate stories, which are really actually about the lives behind, like orchid farmers, coffee growers, and so on. And then I moved into publishing, and I've had a stint as a high school teacher. And then in 2015, I started writing again. And I met Sainath a year later. And after that, there's been no looking back, because I found finally what really brings me the greatest joy, which is, traveling to rural India, writing the stories of people whose stories I feel really need to be told. They're just waiting to be told. And it took me multiple trips to Sitilingi, which is this really idyllic valley. And I'm deeply interested in education, not just because I've been a teacher, but I actually am. So I always look for schools which are slightly unusual. And I'd heard about this school, which was, working with tribal children and just teaching them skills so that they would not be at the bottom rung in terms of, labor options. So I went there, and I also found, that the Lambadi women in that, in a Tanda, in a village hamlet over there, had revived their Lambadi skills. And Sitilingi is really in Dharmapuri district. And when you enter Sitilingi, you have to travel 12 kilometers to even be able to speak on your cell phone. There is absolutely no cell tower within sight. So it's very remote. And from this, and the story is actually fictionalized, but it's very, very true in the sense of the theme of the story, which is, it's just a simple after-school program run by two two young architects who wanted to get into education and wanted to make a difference. They set up this after-school program and just had some crayons and writing paper, and then they would talk to children and explain school subjects to them, and got them back on track in academics, because otherwise they hardly had a teacher who came into the school to teach. Because it's so remote, so teachers would come, but they would quickly transfer themselves in 2 days and leave. So this story, and then they actually did come up with this basic technology course, and they taught young people who were ready to migrate otherwise, just the basics of plumbing, masonry, electronics, so that they could have a skill and they wouldn't go out as just construction laborers working, for long hours in brick kilns and construction sites. And some of the stories, many of the stories in Pari are about migration. Like there are 300 million migrants internally in India. And most of them, in fact, 2/3 of them are rural migrants. And they are mostly very, very young people who go with absolutely zero skills. And so therefore they are at the bottom rung of any employment, situation. They have no bargaining power at all. So this was an effort by the community to actually make a difference, to draw their young people back in, to make farming, more sustainable, to make life in this small community more sustainable. And I found that very fascinating. And I'm very grateful to Pari and Karadi that I could actually make a fictionalized story out of this, because there is so much I learned and there is so much respect I have for what they did that I really enjoyed, writing it as a story. Thank you.
No, definitely. And I think it's so interesting that as an educator, you were also drawn to sort of writing a story which is about, again, education, or the lack of it, like the educational opportunities and what they mean, right?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Preeti.
Thank you.
Okay. Vishaka?
Hi. So
Hi.
I've been trained as a journalist. I did a postgrad diploma journalism and broadcast journalism, and then I went on to work in mainstream media outlets. My last stint with mainstream media was as a business correspondent, and while many people enjoy it, it really wasn't for me. And like everybody else on this call, that one interaction with Mr. P. Sainath was pretty life altering. For me, it was while I was in college. At the time, he was telling us about Pari, which hadn't started. And it always stuck with me because you had never heard of anything like a Pari. I'm talking about like 6-7 years ago. It was completely novel and it was definitely needed, as is today. So it was at the back of my head, and I approached him and said, I would love to be associated with this in some capacity. Eventually, it worked out. And today I help in social media strategizing. I work with Preeti on education, and I report also. It's been a while since I've actually gone onto the field. That said, this book was born out of a reporting experience to Krishnagiri, a place in Tamil Nadu, where there's an institution called Snehagram, and it's about, or rather, it is for kids who have HIV, and how they essentially take care of themselves so that they're equipped to get out into the world and handle their lives, because they all come from families that are economically weak. So when I first went and I reported on the story, I was like, oh God, is this going to be one of those cutesy stories where I'm talking about, student council and a parliamentary system? But it was obviously so much more than that. You have kids who don't have parents, who are living with this virus that the world is so deathly afraid of, and who still managed to do incredible things. These kids had taken part in some crazy athletic events, traveled the world. And it was beyond my understanding and knowledge at the time that people with HIV can live lives like this. And if I, felt that way, I was certain that many readers would as well. So I was actually thrilled when, I heard about the opportunity to convert this into a book. It's a great way to introduce kids to something like HIV, a threatening virus. So yeah. That's it.
No, definitely. I definitely agree with that. So, Louis?
Hi. So my least favorite part is always talking about myself. So I'll keep it brief. I mean, I do a bit of writing. I try to make films. I was an editor for a while, which is how I joined Pari, actually. And I started working with them on the library, which is essentially, repository of documents, including books, reports, essays, academic papers, etc., on rural India. So while I was being exposed to various aspects of both the unorganized sector and migration, which ended up being sort of these two major themes of the book. But I was being exposed to them in a kind of I would say maybe distant, almost abstract manner. Then, I had spoken about, these two kids who were the children of construction laborers in my previous book. And, Sainath sort of talked to Karadi and they wanted to do this series of books. And they said, hey, you know what, you've written for kids. You want to try your hand at this? And I said, yes, because it'll give me this opportunity to write for a different age group. I wrote for 7 to 10-year-olds. Now I wrote for 10 to 15-year-olds, and also because it was a way to continue to engage with this phenomenon, which is rural to urban migration, and also working in the unorganized sector. So essentially the story on which the book is based is also called No Ticket Will Travel. It's written by Rahul M., who is a journalist, an independent journalist for Pari, and he's based in Anantapur. And what he does is that he takes this train journey from a village or a big town in Anantapur to Kochi. And on the way, he meets people who are also taking this journey. So based on this article, which really had sort of sketches of some of the people who were taking this journey, I developed the stories of sort of 6 different characters, some drawn from other stories that Rahul had filed from the district. But really, I mean, the research that formed the base of the book was Rahul's stories, and of course Sainath's stories, because he had been looking at the agrarian crisis in Andhra Pradesh and Anantapur for a very long time. So that's a little bit about it.
That's great. Thank you for sharing, Subhuhi. And actually, this transitions me perfectly into the next question, which you have sort of answered a little bit, which is, what was sort of your immediate response to the idea of writing this book? I mean, these books, and how did you decide which story to write? Because obviously, um, as researchers, you sort of met many people, and you meet in that way, you sort of come across many different stories, many experiences, many people. And so, when you were approached to sort of write this book, how did you approach that, and how did you have to make a choice between which story you were going to choose, or whose story you were going to tell?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it was definitely a challenge because unlike the other writers, I did not have first-hand experience of either Anantapur, Kochi, yes, but only as a tourist. I mean, never with, say, laborers who are working in construction or road laying, who sort of make their presence known in this book. I mean, I was both excited and nervous. I was nervous because how am I going to talk about people who are from rural Anantapur, right? And how am I going to make that convincing for the reader? And how am I not going to be this Anglophone person, trying to understand the life of people from a totally different cultural context than me? So my one simple solution was to get on the phone with Rahul N and to just throw at him all kinds of questions about everything, really. I mean, he has been a huge, huge support through the writing of this book. But the other thing I did, of course, was a whole lot of research. So apart from the one story that Rahul wrote, I read a bunch of other stories that he filed, all from Anantapur, in order to understand the larger context, which is the agrarian crisis, which is forcing people to leave Anantapur, but also the failure of certain government employment schemes like Manrega, yeah, due to which there isn't enough employment, yeah, either in the villages or in bigger towns like Kadari in Anantapur district. So I was reading across, yeah, like, I mean, I wouldn't say across genre, but also across genre, and that I moved from reportage to also academic papers. So then I was reading about, okay, what are the working conditions of migrant laborers in Kochi? So I drew from the research work of a scholar called Maitri Prasad, who has done sort of her PhD on precisely this topic. So I mean, I was trying to kind of understand the world, and then I also wanted to represent people from different age groups. I wanted a younger girl, but was also lower caste, because I also wanted to communicate to children what it's like to be a lower caste girl. I mean, I have no understanding of it, but based on my reading of that one particular girl's experience, I thought, let me try to represent this. Yeah. Then I wanted somebody who was forced to drop out of college, but is still deeply, deeply attached to Telugu literature, which was his topic. And this is a real life story. So these are all real life stories, all on, most of them on Pari. Then, a middle-aged woman with her son, who's also Muslim. So I wanted to ensure, and on World Minorities Day, it seems important to also talk about various kinds of minorities, religious, caste, etc. So I tried to bring all of those into the book. An older lady. Now, some of these tales were completely fictional. So what I also did is I would take the context and sometimes go off on sort of fantastical journeys. So that this older lady in her 60s actually tells a story to a younger boy, also sleeping on the pavement with her, they're pavement dwellers, about, something totally fantastical because he's bitten so badly by the mosquitoes. He just can't go to sleep. Yeah. And then an older gentleman in his 80s who, who had to leave Anantapur, and like this 60-year-old lady, I mean, his children were in different cities working as migrant laborers there. They were dependent on them for some time, but then after a while, the parent begins to feel like, how much more can I take from my son or daughter when they themselves are struggling? So this 80-year-old man says, okay, you know what? I'm going to not now be dependent, and I'm going to live a life which is hopefully looked over by the universe. And these are also stories I drew from Pari, based on real life experiences of people, and then of course one sort of fictionalized them. Yeah.
Are you waiting for one of us to go?
Yes,
Yeah.
I am.
In my case, it was honestly just gifted to me. I didn't have to make the tough choice of which story I'm going to work on. I think Curry Tales and Pari figured out that this was the story that I would work on. Sorry, what was the latter part of your question? How did we go about with research, or who did we know how to base the book on? Was that it?
No, it was what was your reaction, and then how did you sort of decide which stories to represent?
Yeah. Like I mentioned earlier, I was thrilled. I mean, I have never
Can you talk
imagined
about your research process? I would be happy to know about that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've never imagined myself as anything more than a reporter. I don't even consider myself like a writer. So the opportunity to write a book was unimaginable. The book was based on the kids I had met. And because they have HIV, they obviously didn't want their identities to be disclosed because unfortunately the stigma is pervasive. So it's a semi-fictionalized account of these kids from an institute that takes care of HIV affected individuals. And I mean, the protagonist of this book is based on all their personalities. I had wonderful sessions with them where, I found their sense of humor to be quite wicked. They also spoke quite poignantly about the tragedies in their life, but they were just a bunch of kids like anybody else. They knew how to pull, make fun of their friends in case stories got too sentimental. And I really just it took me back to school essentially, because that's how dynamics between friends are. So it was based on these kids, no one person in particular. And honestly, I was gifted a very beautiful story from these children. I really didn't have to do very much of the hard work other than, okay, I got to put 10,000 words or 15,000 words onto a Word doc. So yeah, that's it.
Great. I love it. A very, very journalistic approach to writing this book.
Yeah, I'll also chime in there and say that it's a completely audacious move. It really seemed audacious to, imagine ourselves as, moving from reporting to writing a book, and that too for young children. I've been an editor for books, but I've never been a writer, and that too for this age group. But I was lucky that my story, could work around the book. The people in my story, many of them are fictionalized, especially the protagonist is fictionalized. And I vetted the entire story with the people in Tulir, and I had it read out to many of them because I went and met them and I said, can I use your story? And I also asked them, which one of you wants your name in the book and which one of you doesn't want your name in the book? So then there are some real names and there are some fictionalized names. So I wanted it to be a journey with everyone in my book, in the original story, and me. I was just writing it like Vishaka said, I was gifted a story. I was also just gifted this, and I said, look, this is your story. I'm just writing it. So you tell me what to want, what to put in and what to take out, So, and it was really nice to write a novel, because there are so many things when you go as a reporter that you hear and listen, but you can't put down in 1,500 words in a story for Pari, and you feel, oh my God, I just wish I had a little more space, but it's not possible. And so there's this gift, and like I said, completely audacious. Wow, can write a book. So, but I mean, my professional life has been a bit like that. You know, every 5 years is something audacious I do. I moved from print to television to publishing to teaching English to teaching economics and then to Paris. So in line with that.
I think that's amazing. And I love that you sort of define your life by this audaciousness.
I think my journey was very similar to Preeti and Vishaka's. So I was asked to write Chandra's story specifically. So that was an easy choice. I had written her story both for Pari and also for my book, which is about rural livelihoods in Tamil Nadu. It's a non-fiction book. So I had done some of the research about, agrarian livelihoods and Tamil Nadu. What was hard, I think, when writing it for children was I think you're taking very complex issues and you have no way of presenting them, as complex issues. You have to make them very, very simple. And I think that's an excellent learning for nonfiction writing, So Chandra's, this book, No Nonsense Nandri, was my third children's book. And one was a picture book. Another one was, again, a fictionalized version of another Pari book. And then it was this, and then I've got some more. So this book, given the age group 10 to 15, it was very interesting because at that age group, people don't want to be treated as children. They want to be reading things which are real world, which are contemporary. At the same time, this is very removed from the life of urban children. So how do you make the story accessible? How do you take the agrarian crisis, things that they see in the headlines, things that they see in the television about farmer suicide, about women farmers who we never speak about, because when we say farmer, we know a man. We know a man in a dhoti who's standing behind, bullocks, and he's got a plow. So that's an idea of a farmer. If it's a modern farmer, he comes in a tractor. He comes in a tractor. Women are not there. Women are there in all these postcards where they're transplanting paddy and they're singing a song. That's it. So, but, single woman, single mother farmers, there are so many of them, and not out of choice. They're forced into it, by compulsion. The funny thing is, many of them are not even considered as, part of the workforce. According to our workforce participation numbers, only 30% of the rural women are working. Are the rest of them getting food by Swiggy? It's ridiculous, right? We have to ask these questions. We have to tell children, listen, there are these women, they're working day and night, and they are plucking the most fragrant of flowers. They don't have the time to smell it. They've got access to this, absolutely beautiful, natural setting. We pay money to go and stay there. They don't have a minute, to sit down and look at it or admire it. I wanted them to understand that, and also what it might be to be a child, in that setting. Chandra's story, like, all the others have said, is semi-fictionalized. It is drawn from her life, but all the fictionalized parts have been done with her permission. So we had multiple chats, like almost every night. Like, I'd call her up and say, in that chapter, you fall in love. And she's like, Ayo, Akka, why am I falling in love? And I'm like, come on, Chandra, it'll be fun. So, then we'd have that discussion. And then, only what she was okay with actually went into the book. So she knew. And then, like, in the end, and I said, Chandra, they want me to add a speech. Do you think I can add a speech? And she said, okay, Ka, write a speech. So I wrote the speech and I called her up. And then I said, okay, Chandra, this is what I've written. This sounds like you. And she said, okay, Ka, it sounds like me. So someday she'll be like that, and someday she'll be like, you made my life so easy. It's not that easy. But, for children, her life was breathtakingly hard. How do you break it to children that, listen, people can have tragedies after tragedies after tragedies in their life and still get up and go? That's the life in rural India. And how do you tell that story to children? That was a challenge. And I think all of us faced that challenge in the stories that we had to, tell.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think one thing that, all of you have brought up is also that fine line between, when you're representing or you're talking about other people's stories, like when we're fictionalizing something that's factual, like that line, that very thin line between sort of what is fact and what is fiction and how much can we fictionalize real people's lives. I think that was definitely something that was challenging with these books, with writing these books. And then, of course, another challenge was that, like you mentioned, it's for children, and it's for children in a certain age group. And you had to sort of also think about how to make this accessible to them, but also how to make it in some way interesting, right? Like how to talk about such serious sort of topics and how to show them sort of the reality of the world and yet make those books engaging so that they would continue reading and actually finish reading your books. So I would love to know, in terms of your writing process, how you sort of dealt with those challenges, or what your process was, if you consider them challenges at all.
I think everyone here is probably faced with quite a challenge because, as Aparna said, she's talking about the agrarian crisis. Preeti is talking about migration, as is Subhuhi. And these are tough to grasp when you're that young. I think for me, and it came over the course of writing the book, several nudges from the editorial end at Karadi, which was fabulous, that you don't have to theorize these concepts that are difficult to grasp. And there was a time when I was writing the book where I was doing just that. I was trying to explain what HIV was, what it does to the immunity system, and getting kind of scientific and biological about it. That's not what a kid necessarily wants to read or is interested in or has the bandwidth to grasp. They're doing that in class anyway. I think how you can translate tough concepts is through beautiful stories, because somebody's tough concept is somebody else's lived experience, right? So Krishna living with HIV, being discriminated, occasionally falling sick, how he maintains and navigates friendships, that's the life of a kid who happens to have HIV. So at some point, the lens kind of, it was a different lens for me, with help from the editorial team, that don't tell, show. And it's something you hear a lot, right? Even in journalistic writing, don't show, or what, wait, am I confusing? What is it?
Show, don't tell.
Show, don't tell, exactly. So that was the mantra essentially for me, yeah.
Yeah, just to add to what Vishakha is saying, Sainath is a great proponent of storytelling. He believes that whatever is the issue, if you can tell a good story, if you can grab your reader's attention, if you can bring in that feeling, and yet be a journalist, my God, it sounds like an impossible thing to do, right? But he pulls it off, of course, fabulously every time. And so we are encouraged to, do that as well. And I wanted to write a story about, longing, and not just a simple longing for a younger brother, for his older brother who has to migrate, and, he just feels lonely at home. He misses him. He wants his brother back. And he's worried about his brother catching some infection, because he's heard that, young migrant children who come back, they have infections and they get weakened. And it was just that little story of, sibling relationship that I wanted to bring out, and friendships and simple things like lying at night in a valley and, just not having any lights around you and being able to see the stars above. And honestly, I didn't make that up. It's actually how Sitilingi is. Yeah.
Just to add to what everyone is saying, I had, two very challenging moments while writing the book, when I had to think about, okay, can I talk about farmers' suicides openly in the book? And at the end of all the stories, there's actually this kind of note in which I've tried to explain to kids in a very simple manner of, the agrarian crisis, and why, especially in Anantapur, and why people have had to leave, and the move to cash crops, this, that, etc., how that has affected the whole scenario. But so there were three instances. One was that just the extent or the number of farmer suicides that have taken place in rural Anantapur. Could I include that in the book? Was that too much for 10 to 15-year-old children? And that call, actually, I was not really equipped to make. So it's one that Karadi helped me make. So we had to sort of phrase it as lost their lives versus taking their lives, because some of the stories, like there was another story in which, because of indebtedness, there is a young 26-year-old MBA who's a sort of a side character in one of the stories. And his story is being narrated by a guy who's doing road laying work, who's also going through the same problem. Now, this guy went to the bank, and in the middle of the bank, he took poison, and that's how he killed himself. Now, this is a story that's been reported on Pari, but how do you then retell that story for children? Are you, when you are talking about people taking their own lives, is that too much for 10 to 15-year-old children? This is a question that I kept asking myself. I spoke to Karadi about it. I said, what do you guys feel? So they said, what, let's not give it all at one go, because we're already talking about migration. We're already talking about uncertainty. We're already talking about insecurity of tenure. We're talking about poverty. Yeah. And I also want to talk about alcoholism, because that's another thing that I read about, among sort of migrant men who come to the cities and are doing work. But even that, I mean, we wondered, because the thing is that you can, in a way, download all of the very, tragic things that are happening in the lives of these people, or you decide that, okay, I'm going to show this one aspect of their lives, which is really, really difficult. There are other aspects too, which make it even more difficult, but do I give them all at one go? And if I choose not to give them all at one go, if I decide to talk about, this one, say, particular lower caste girl's experience who, didn't get the scholarship that she was supposed to get from the government because her name was misspelled on her Aadhaar card. And she's one of the characters in the book, a girl called Aruna. If I show that aspect of her life, and maybe not everything else, but also try to introduce some element of hope, some element of survival, some element of dealing with the odds, and that's sort of what eventually happened, that we didn't show all the various kinds of marginalization in every story, but maybe one or two or three, and then introduce some element of hope of fighting against the odds. So yeah, that's sort of how I dealt with it.
So I think I would be repeating myself if I think, they have covered pretty much a lot of the things. What was for me, I think, interesting, whether it was in the non-fiction or in the fiction book, was writing about a Tamil setting in English. I think language is such an integral part of India, right?
Yes.
Like how we were discussing in the start of this, right? All of us are sitting with very different layers of clothes. I'm here in Chennai with a single layer, and somebody in Delhi is covered up, and somebody in Bangalore is wrapped up. So I think the countryside can vary so dramatically. Every 10 kilometers, every 100 kilometers, you're going to have a different cuisine, you're going to have a different dialect. So no Tamil is the same. All of Tamil Nadu does not speak the same Tamil. We have very different Tamils. So if I'm going to go to Sivaganga, into one little village, and then talk about somebody there, she's speaking in Tamil actually, but I'm going to write about it in English. It cannot be the same English that I would use to talk about, my experience in Chennai, given my caste and class location, right? So it had to be different. How does one do that? So my go-to has always been fiction that's been translated from Tamil into English, and I think there's some fabulous translators. I read them over and over to get a sense of the language, the landscape, and that actually helps me with fiction writing, fiction and non-fiction, of course, for any kind of writing. And I think boxing, something for an age group, is something we do because one has to actually tell somebody that, listen, this is meant for this person, but anybody can read it. I think all of us have read books that were not meant for us at a very young age, and now we might go to a children's book, right? So that way books have a very elastic age group. So one had to make the language part of it authentic, and that was quite a challenge for me. I think, and because we had to include some of them in the original names, like relationships, for example, because when I read a book that's set in a certain community, I want to know what somebody calls their mother there. I don't want to just hear mother, right? I want to learn something from the book. So those kind of things, I think, were quite challenging, and it was really interesting to be able to do that in fiction.
Yeah. I think definitely, you've all sort of captured the small nuances of how your own stories had your own challenges. And I definitely agree about language. I think, that's something that can be very challenging, about how to also show sort of authentic experiences, like how to make them still seem authentic or still seem rooted while, sort of writing them in English, and then sort of what English are we writing in and whose language it is. So that's definitely very interesting. And that again, Aparna, you have transitioned me into my next question, which is, because all of you are sort of experienced with writing nonfiction, and I mean, I know that for Subuhi, for example, she has written fiction before and she's written for children before, but sort of now that you have that experience of writing both nonfiction and fiction, what has the sort of response been like for the book? And also, do you think that fiction is able to reach a different kind of audience, or is able to reach people in a different way than, journalism or non-fiction is able to?
Um, I definitely think it is a very different audience itself. For example, my mother read my non-fiction version slowly. She read my No Nonsense Nandini in one go. She just said that this book is easier, because it reads like a story in the sense that I don't pause, I don't give data. It just goes there, but it gives you all the information that is there in the non-fiction story in a different way, right? I mean, you're having much more drama, you're having peaks, you're having troughs, all of which I would, do in a non-fiction, but in a fiction, it is just, I think, an easier read. So I've also written this book, a chapter book about my dogs, which is called Woof. And so it was interesting because I was writing these two books sort of back to back, and they were very different experiences. Both were the same age group, but one was about dogs and one was about, people in Tamil Nadu. But I think what I learned from that is that I will never take nonfiction for granted, because you learn everything from there. You learn how to observe. When you go to the beach, for example, which was my setting for one book, you need to know every single grain of sand. And this is something that I tell myself now. If I have to write 1,000 words, my research, my reading, my understanding has to be 1 lakh. Only then I will be able to write those 1,000 words authentically. I think that is something that nonfiction trains you to do, which you use in fiction. And the tropes of fiction, which is basically like you make the story move. It's something that, one uses in nonfiction. I think that's been my takeaway largely.
Yeah, I think I would like to really thank my editor in the beginning, Shreya Narayan, and then Daya later on, more recently, for really, encouraging and also saying, okay, yeah, this is fine. You can go ahead. I'm like, oh my God, that's such a relief. So that was a huge relief that, okay, I'm not writing some nonsense, which is unreadable. And just to add to what Aparna and Vishaka also said about, this feelings thing. And so as journalists, we are not, when you write for journalism, and which is what at least I've done all my life, is you have to keep the feelings out of it, But suddenly here you're being allowed to discuss somebody's feelings, longing for an older brother, or feeling lost about leaving your home and going to stay in, the HIA place, or how Chandra felt about, her work, whatever. Or in Subuhi's book also about, leaving home and going to work somewhere. These are all things which we would not be able to bring into, really dwell upon much in our journalism writing. But here we were given this nice blank slate and said, go ahead.
Definitely. And in fiction, emotions are encouraged, right? Like it's highly encouraged to make sure that you're writing something that's emotional, that connects emotionally with the readers. So that's definitely something that's very different from nonfiction.
Vishaka, why don't you share your experience and then I'll talk about mine.
To answer your question about does it reach different audiences, yeah, I also think that unfortunately now the way journalism, or most journalism, is consumed is via social media. And that's like a carnival, because there are lights everywhere and you're competing for attention. So you really have to have the most prominent hook out there, and even then people are not going to spend all their time on your story. It's probably a read and buy. I'm off to do something else. But with fiction, they're giving you that time. They're investing that time and buying that book, opening that book and reading it. And if they like your story, they're going to get to the end of it, right? So there's definitely a way to really kind of, like Aparna said, use the tropes of fiction to get the audience to understand the issue through heightened emotion and whatever it is. So I think there's like an overlap of audiences, maybe. Yeah, there are people who will pay attention to the journalistic part of it. They like your fiction, but there'll definitely be a different audience that'll be drawn into the fiction of these worlds. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, what was interesting and sometimes a bit challenging was sort of the interiority of these characters. How are they thinking? So while fiction allows you to kind of explore that and really answer questions like, who am I, or what do I feel, how do you, when you are trying to enter somebody's head, answer that question with a degree of either assurance or authenticity? right? So I know how I'm feeling, but how is Balu feeling? How is Sadia feeling? How is Nagaraju feeling? That said, I mean, there is also, and finally, if fiction is perhaps a projection of you, yeah, onto these characters. So even if they are real in terms of sort of their skeleton, yeah, their muscles, their ligaments, their tendons are likely to be like yours, perhaps, right? In terms of response, there was one for me which was so gratifying. I mean, I can't really make statements about how like who is going to read the book, but when Rahul's mom read the book, actually, so Rahul was the journalist, right, who first wrote No Ticket Will Travel, and he said to me, this is one of the few books in English that my mom has actually read to the end. And he sent me this little Telugu message that she had sent him. And she said, Rahul, we must also cover other issues from Anantapur district in this way. So like the sex trafficking that's happening out of Kadri, and like this is such a good way to represent our people and our district. And for me,
That's amazing. Okay, so my final question is more sort of lighthearted, but would you write a book again? And if yes, what would it be about?
I think I really enjoyed the process of writing, and if I can ever find the time again, and if this book does well or whatever, and I may just want to try my hand at it, because I mean, even at the grand old age that I am, I still read books written for children. I still have the entire William collection. I have Adrian Moore. I have Anne. I have all those books, and they're very treasured books of mine. So I think I still live in that space in my head. I'll be quite happy to go back to it.
Yeah, no, I love reading young adult fiction. That's my favorite, more than reading fiction for adults. I just love it. It's my happy space. So would you write for children again, Preeti?
I don't know. Let's see. Never say never.
So yes, I will, and working on some stuff. So let's see what comes out of it. Maybe a couple in 2021. So, yes.
Yeah, me too. I have an idea for a historical romance and for young adults, which hopefully will also echo the inequities of the present. So let's see. Yeah, that's the hope.
No, same. I mean, after the experience that was this book with Karadi, it's hard not to want to do it again.